Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thank you all for joining. I am excited to welcome Sandra into the podcast. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
Yes, awesome. Well, let's get started by having you tell everyone out there listening or watching who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I am a women's transformation coach. I actually became a coach in 2005 when a lot of people didn't even know what that was. And my passion is helping women going through midlife crisis or midlife challenges, such as divorce or those really rough and raw times in life where women need that support. They need someone to help guide them and becoming more empowered and grounded. I also had a career in working in the nonprofit and healthcare industry in leadership management. And however, in 2020, I decided I was done trying to make other organizations manifest their vision and mission statements and decided it was my turn. So I came back to my coaching practice full time and have been all in and loving it.
Awesome. Now we love to hear love to hear that. So many good things there. One thing that I really love that you called out was a lot of times people don't know that they need support.
Mhm.
And so they're just going through the same circle, doing the same thing over and over and over, and they just don't know where to get help. And I
Yeah,
think it's important that that you called that out, because like you said, maybe in 2005 people weren't really getting coaches or getting that support that they need, and now at least I think we're in a space now in a time where people are more open to getting that help. But
yeah.
on the other side of that, I think you still be so shocked and surprised at the number of people who just don't actually like reach out for that support.
Yeah, and how, some people are still suspicious of,
Mhm.
those non-traditional ways of approaching things. I feel like a lot of women that I end up working with have been in therapy, and so that's
Mhm.
usually their first foray into something's not right, I need to take a look at this.
Mhm.
And then I think they get to that point where they realize, oh, this is about developing myself, and maybe this approach has been wonderful, but maybe it's time for the next thing, which
Yes.
I always think that there's just differences between therapy and coaching. They certainly, we blend into a similar landscape, but I think that a lot of times when people get to that place, they realize there is something more and they want to start taking a look
Mhm.
at that. Yeah.
Yes, and I also like that you mentioned that too, because I always try to tell people, I'm like, they are very different. They are partners in that journey. Like I
Yeah.
have a therapist, I have a coach, but they play two different roles in my life. The
Mhm.
therapist, helps me to work on like past issues. Why am I the way? Like why? How do the things of my past affect who I am today? How
Yeah.
can we work on those things? And then the coach is helping you to like reach the goals and the things that the person you want to evolve into, or the mission that you have for yourself or your company.
Yeah.
And what I really like about you and your journey, which you will talk about here shortly, is that you're helping people because you've lived the experience. You've gone through the transformation yourself. And I always feel like all suspicion goes out the door
Yeah.
when you connect to someone who has shared experiences.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I think I love that you bring that up because I believe that that's what many coaches do is they've already been there, done that, or gone through it, and they
Mhm.
bring that wisdom to the piece of what they're helping people because I find it really hard to walk someone through something that I don't have any
Mhm.
orientation for. So I would never say, I can help you with this and not
Mhm.
know,
Yes.
how to go about that. That's why I don't call myself a dating coach. That's not my specialty.
Right.
Because there are other people out there that are really good at that. So I would
Mhm.
never want to endeavor in that place. Just like, I wouldn't want to hire someone who's helping me with relationship challenges who doesn't really understand how to
Exactly.
work through that piece. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your journey of transformation. So you went through a cancer diagnosis, divorce, and single parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think all women go through times of transformation. We all just have our own story and our own things that happen. Um,
Mhm,
but definitely for me, I was in my early 40s and, felt like I was doing pretty good in life. And then to get a cancer diagnosis, it really stopped me in my tracks. And, for me, in retrospect, that was such a lovely gift because I really wasn't on course and truly being myself. So this was a message from me, from universe or God or whatever you want to say is, girl, it's time to stop and take a look at what's
mhm.
going on here. Um, so that I use that time for a lot of reflection. I had a lovely therapist at the cancer center that I was going to, and she started asking me questions like, who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing? What's your mission here? And those were maybe more life coaching questions. But she was also a woman who helped people with death and dying. So she was giving me all those questions, and they were really powerful. And they really got me thinking and digging into those things. And what I started to realize is that for me, it felt like cancer was letting me know that my body was not happy with the way that I was managing my life.
Mhm,
And a big part of how I was managing my life was I was living it for everyone else, um,
mhm,
and not really having a clear picture of me and where I was in all of that, and also not having great boundaries. So
mhm,
I started the adventure of really learning more about myself and having boundaries. And as I started going into that process, I started to realize that I didn't want to be spend another 20 years in a marriage I just spent 20 years in because I could
mhm.
see that we weren't going to be on the same path. Um,
Right.
Nothing super horrendous about the relationship. It was just wasn't going to be enough for
Mhm,
me. I
mhm,
wanted more. And I think that's what the lovely gift of your mortality, or that
mhm,
clicking clock on how long we have here, I just kept telling myself, I don't feel that this is what I came here for.
mhm,
So that really started that process. It gave me the courage to dismantle a marriage and create two households, and I hadn't been working for a while. So then I
mhm,
come back out in the world, so it was raw, it was painful. It had its, I had a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old daughters, at the time. And so it was just a lot. And I didn't know that I would be the sole uh the caregiver of my daughters till that
mhm,
time. And so that was also shocking. It's like, oh wow, okay, I guess I'm doing this thing. So that just really was a tough time, but also I wouldn't trade it for anything because I started adulting in ways that I
mhm,
hadn't adulted because I got married at 23.
mm,
There were
mhm,
a lot of parts of me I had just, that were, I would say, arrested development in a sense, and I think that's what women find sometimes when they decide to start over or do something different. That's like you have to pick up those pieces of where you stopped developing
mhm,
and create the confidence and courage to move forward.
mhm. Oh my gosh. Okay, so
Mhm.
Sandra, I got like chills when you were just speaking and talking about those experiences because I think something you said is so valid for so many women. It's that moment when you decide that you deserve more,
Mhm.
that you are not living the way that was intended for you. You're not going to reach that purpose. And then when you start the personal development, because that's always a thing,
Yeah.
when personal development starts for someone, if your partner is not aligned to that, it's
Mhm.
definitely going to, like you said, nothing horrendous and
Uh,
cause a breakup, but it is just that sense of like my therapist always says it's like the train is moving and it's like either you're getting on with me or the train's going to leave you behind.
yeah, that's exactly it.
and I and I think there's also another piece to that because I was there when you talked about boundaries.
Mhm.
And I was like, yes, yes, yes. It's so interesting that, as you're like living life, you think you've got, boundaries. You think that. And I too remember in 2019, I was like at my job, I was doing everything for everybody at the job. I was trying to like manage. I often on the podcast refer to it as like, I don't know, that thing where it like you throw up a lot of balls in the air, and then you're like running from side to side
Yeah,
trying to make
spinning
sure.
plates,
Yeah,
spinning
yeah, yes. And it's like, I remember that's how I felt as
yeah,
I decided, I can't do this anymore. I was
yeah,
like, this is not healthy or sustainable for me. And I remember going into therapy, and my therapist like listening to me, like she let me have the floor. She let me
mhm,
talk for like 15 minutes about what I thought I was there for and what I needed. And afterwards she said, "You don't have any boundaries."
mhm.
And she's just like, "You're just doing for everybody else, but like, what do you want to be doing for yourself?" And I was just like, "Well, I want to be helping other people. Like, I want to help people, and I don't want anybody to have to feel like they're over." She's like, "But who helps you?"
Ah,
And she's like, whoever fills your cup again."
mhm,
And in that moment, it was a very eye-opening experience. So I want to just talk about like boundaries and women,
yeah,
because what challenges do you see in the work that you do
yeah.
with the women when it comes to like setting healthy boundaries?
Yeah. I think first of all, we're just not taught that it's okay for us to have boundaries. And
Hmm.
also, and for men too, that we are not taught how to have boundaries, just like most of us aren't taught how to balance a checkbook. Like there's just
Uh-huh.
major life things we just don't get.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's just one problem right there. The problems I see that women come across with boundaries is, first of all, they've never really had a conversation with them about what it means to them. So that's
Hmm.
kind of the first place I start with women. And I love to think about boundaries also as, what are your non-negotiables? What are the areas in your life where you are not willing to cross that line? And really, I think that helps us start to show up for ourselves in that way.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I see women halfway setting boundaries, like they dabble, they dip their toe, and then they jump back, and so it's no one can really take them seriously
Hmm.
because they have fear and they're not certain on how to do it. I see that with women. I also see women will set a boundary, but then apologize for setting
Hmm.
a boundary. And then that's just like wiping the slate clean, because if you
Hmm.
set a boundary and apologize, all that person is hearing is that you're uncertain about your boundary. And so that they don't actually respect it. So over apologizing, over explaining, I think is another
Hmm.
challenge women have. So I'm always teaching them it's a one sentence statement. And it said, if the person tries to fight back, all you do is you say it again, but you don't try to say it in 500 different ways so they hear you. Because all they're really doing when they question your boundary is they're making sure that you're actually going to keep it.
Right.
So if we start to over explain or we try to say it differently, then we lose our audience.
Hmm.
And so I think that's really some of the mistakes that we made. And so I started to learn that piece when I was starting to set boundaries with my ex, because I also feel really passionate about women learning to do these things, even in the relationships that maybe they're done with.
Hmm.
Still, you still have to initiate that action to start doing that. And then it becomes really clear what you're going to do with that relationship. If you start setting boundaries and that person is like resisting and now they're gaslighting you, or, they're
Hmm.
stuff, it's very clear. Oh, this relationship is not a healthy one. It is toxic. If you start setting boundaries with someone and they start respecting them, then it's like, oh, maybe this is better than I thought it is. So I think this
Hmm.
is a really great way for us to do a litmus test on where this relationship is anyways. So a lot of the work that I end up doing is I help women address the boundary, and then we start figuring out what request would you make, and how would that sound? And so they start practicing, and they're like, "Oh, I can't say that. That's not my words." I'm like, "Okay, let's find your words then. What are your
Hmm.
words for this situation? It doesn't have to be my words." But a lot of times I'm sharing what that would sound like, and women are like, that's intense. I'm like, yeah, you got to get comfortable with,
Yes. Yeah.
conflict, so those are the things I think, the traps that I see women falling in when
Mhm,
it comes to
mhm.
setting boundaries. I don't know if you experience that as well.
Yes, I love that, because I love that you speak to it from this side, and especially like telling people like how to respond,
Mhm.
because it's uncomfortable for women to set the boundary to start. And
Yes.
then like you said, as soon as the boundary is set, it's going to be challenged.
Uh-huh.
And then it's the over explaining, because I know been at work and I've heard people who have a boundary that they've set, but then they're over talking, over explaining in the meeting about why they can't actually do something. It's not that I don't want to do it. It's like I want to do it, but then I've got all these other projects this week and I've got to get them done. And I'm
Yeah.
like, please stop talking.
Yes.
Please stop. Yeah, just it's no, like, no, I'm just not able to.
Yeah. No is
And
a complete sentence.
exactly. And I think like for me personally, it really because I was on that cusp of like doing a lot of my work right pre-pandemic. And
Uh-huh.
then it went right into the pandemic, and it really helped me to be able to enforce those boundaries because I was like, I mean, what are you going to do to me? I mean, I'm just going to tell you, like, no, I'm going to take my life back. I mean, because, like pre pandemic, I mean, I was going into the office was there at like 7 o'clock. I was leaving there at like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Oh
And
my
I
god.
was working, I was working throughout the day, working through my lunch, and I never left the office, never left the desk other to go to meetings. But then there was something about like taking my life back,
Mhm.
taking control of my life when we all came home to work. And I
Yeah.
was like, huh, imagine I don't have you mean I don't have to live like this?
Uh-huh.
You mean I can? Like, you mean I can take breaks? Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
So it was just really nice to be able to regain that power and to feel like, I had control. I could make the decisions. And it wasn't about me helping somebody. Like, I could help them and still say no.
Yeah.
I could say, yeah, I want the best for what we're doing as a company. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take that on. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, but don't you? Mm-mm, yeah, no, I don't
Oh,
think I'm going to be. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it. I said, here's the thing, I can do it if you want to take this off my plate. And
mhm.
so that was big for me because I'd always in the past just like taken on another project.
Yes. Yeah. And then
And
get overwhelmed and frustrated, right?
oh, for sure. Yeah. Like you're overwhelmed and frustrated. One of the things like I do some career mentorship. Um, and one of the things I always tell people, I'm like, you're taking on this project because you think somebody is going to advocate for you. You think they're going to advocate for you. You think they're going to say, oh my gosh, she's doing so much for us. Let's give her a raise. That is
Uh-huh.
not how it works. It's like it
No,
does not work that way because
no.
you can get the things that you want without having to like overextend yourself and
Yeah.
stress yourself out and be overwhelmed and
Mhm.
to be seen and to put your work out there. So yeah, I think yeah, it's always the boundaries thing is just always like, so it's so key. And I mean, even in personal life, like I
Yeah.
mean, with my husband, I had to start, putting boundaries into place. And at first it was not easy for him because he was just like, who are you?
Yeah. Where did my wife go?
Yeah, he was like, I mean, he's like, who are you? Like you didn't used to say that. And I was like, well,
Uh,
it's the new me, sir.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
but we were able to like have a conversation about it and
Yeah.
why it was important to me to set these boundaries, like even within our relationship. And so at first it was like he was like, I don't wanna. And then I was like, either you're gonna wanna or the
Mhm.
train's gonna move.
Yes.
I've used that
Train
train analogy more than
I love that train analogy. That's great.
I've used that train analogy more times than I can count with him. He's like, and so now I just go the train. And he's like, oh, okay, the
Okay.
train.
Love that. I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
So
I
oh,
think
yeah.
there's a couple other things about boundaries too. It's like I'm always teaching women to listen to when you feel something's not right, to
Mhm.
listen to that internal self or that intuitive self and go
Yeah.
explore it. It doesn't mean you have to
Yeah.
do anything right then and there, but it's our indication that
Mhm.
it's time to take a look at something. You probably had those things bubbling up where you're like, wait a minute, that's
Yeah.
not working for me anymore. I need to address this, and
Yeah.
allowing yourself to hear those voices and to
Yeah.
follow that path is really important. Yeah.
Yes. Because
Mhm.
it's uncomfort. Like you feel uncomfortable. Like you
Yes.
feel
Very.
antsy. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, I don't know. Cause that whole like summer leading up to me, like, exploring and going to therapy, I was just like, oh my God, like, so
Mm,
this, I just can't, like, this doesn't feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, God, like, this is not what you have me here for. It was all those like questions, like, I've got to be working towards something like bigger than this. Like
mhm.
this
Yeah.
can't be it, right?
Yeah, right. There's more here. There's always more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's so important to like listen. I always say, like, your intuition, it won't let you down.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you've got to like trust yourself and
Yeah.
be willing to take a step. Because a lot of people will like, bury it and they'll
Yeah.
just say like, oh, no, I probably don't need to be doing that. I'm just gonna, it's like a lot of people like you mentioned, starting your own business.
Mhm.
And you saying to yourself that, I'm it's time for me to stop helping someone else like
Mm.
build their dream and see
Yeah.
their dream come to life, and it's time for me to focus on mine. I
Yeah.
mean, there are probably so many people who have that thought every single day, but they don't often know, they get overwhelmed in the thought of like, well,
Mhm.
how do I make it happen? How do I
Yeah.
do it? And
Yeah.
it's like, really, everyone, this is where coaching,
Yes.
this is where getting a coach comes into play, because you don't
Yeah.
have to do it alone. You
Yeah.
simply have to take the first step of saying that I commit to me
Yes.
and I want this for myself, and then go
Mm.
out and find a partner
Mhm.
who can help you on the journey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to decide you're worth it,
Hmm.
and you're worth the investment,
Yeah.
because I think that's the other thing I come across is women will invest in themselves in ways that feel less selfish, you
Hmm.
but then when it comes to, like making that statement of I'm hiring a coach or I'm going to this program, I'm doing
Hmm.
this, for a lot of women, they're like, that's uncomfortable because we're not used to investing in ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, so that also brings up worth, and what we
Hmm.
think, and I mean, I had a woman who came into my daughter and I have a program, and she came into it, and it was the most she'd ever spent on self-development, but she just
Hmm.
kept saying, "It's cheaper than a divorce." She's not really sure that's really the problem, and so it's
Yeah.
like, don't launch into, blowing up
Hmm.
your whole life. Like, how about let's just explore what's here, So
Hmm.
I think it's interesting how women also don't allow themselves to make investments in themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
with
That is.
time, with money, with,
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Always getting like the 2 minutes that are left in the day
Yeah,
after you've done
exactly.
everything for everyone
Right.
else,
"Oh,
and
it's
then
me
it's,
time," and it's like,
yeah,
"Oh my gosh."
it's you
So
time.
much
It's time to go to bed.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
let's also talk about getting stuck in old patterns, right? So
yeah.
we all know you can start the process, you can do something, and then maybe you take a step back. You like backslide. Like, can you talk more about that?
Yeah, this is I mean, I came across this with myself when I was going through, and even in just all the last 20 years of continuing my self-development, what I've come across is that we all have old patterns and
Mm-hmm.
old traumas. Some of us maybe smaller, like micro traumas, some of us like
Hmm.
really intense things that have happened. And those form our core beliefs, they form our stories, our narrative, and if we don't have a lot of awareness, we'll just keep repeating that again and again when the situation is long gone. So I think that it's really important I think this is why I'm passionate about midlife. And I use
Hmm.
that very loosely because we don't know when our midlife really is. I mean, some of
Yeah.
us live to 100 and some don't, so I just say anywhere in your 30s to your 60s,
Hmm.
that could be your midlife period. And we all have these times in our life where it's like, this is not working. And I love Brené Brown and her whole
Hmm.
her whole talking about this, because she talks about it, is that armor has to come down. All those strategies and tools we used when we were younger don't work anymore at midlife. And, so she calls it a midlife unraveling. And I think that's
Mhm.
exactly what it is. We have to be able to weed out and remove and let go some of these old strategies of how we've been dealing with life. And this is like a never ending process. I
Mhm.
still find these little things, where I'm like, wow, what is that over here? And I find
Mhm.
myself healing that piece, and I think that's the balance of therapy and coaching, is that once you have the awareness there, then you can work with yourself, you can work with your body
Mhm.
to heal those parts of you, but you have to see how those strategies and how that armor no longer works. And this really becomes apparent when you're trying to set boundaries, because you might
Mhm.
have been defensive all the time, right? You were protecting yourself, you're protecting this little
Mhm.
girl who maybe was told some horrible things or whatever. And so it's
Mhm.
like, well, now that's not going to work anymore. So we actually have to dismantle that. And so now we're going to have some boundary skills in order to address those things. So that's kind of what I mean with this piece of like old stories, old narratives. And you have to be able to be aware of what you're telling yourself all
Mhm.
the time, because that internal messaging you're sending yourself becomes your external reality, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because yes, the when we're negatively talking to ourselves like all the time and that's all you ever speak to yourself, of course that is your reality.
Yeah.
So I'm always telling people, I'm like, if you've got to put sticky notes everywhere to affirm yourself and to speak positively into yourself like daily, like then do that. But I'm like, don't allow because yes, we're human. The negative thoughts will come and say,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not really like that qualified, are you?
Uh-huh.
Like you'll have those
Yeah.
moments of things and it starts. I always think that, you have to positively affirm yourself. But you also have to give yourself grace
Mhm.
because we are human and
Mhm.
there are moments where, you allow for yourself to, like you said, to kind of backtrack into that thing
Mhm.
of old and it affects you.
Mhm.
So I always, and my therapist always says, she's like, it's okay to honor the feeling, but
Mhm.
don't let it like take up residence, in your brain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I always say don't get on the ride, because it's like if you get on that ride, then you have to go through the whole ride.
it's
And so the whole piece is like seeing, oh, look, that's the ride. I'm not getting on it. So
exactly.
yeah, it's the awareness. A lot of times my clients will text me like, dang, I got on the ride. And it's like, it's okay, just breathe.
I
We
love that.
right? It's just we start reacting to something and then
Yeah.
we're hijacked on that piece. But I just think
Yeah.
it's really important for us to I think it's really helpful for us to see our little themes of those
Mhm.
things that come up. So I'll just give an example of mine. When I decided to start my business again, I just
Mhm.
went into I don't know land. I went into I don't know the answers to this. I'm not sure if I should buy this program. I went into this
Mhm.
whole chaos, and what kind of as I dug into that deeper, I started to realize that's one of my core beliefs is when I'm presented with not knowing how to do something, I just tell myself I don't know. you
Mm.
and so now I know that that's my thing. When I feel
Mhm.
that I don't know coming up, then I'm like, oh, that's just because of my childhood, my past. I just never
Yeah.
felt secure enough to have answers, but I know everything that I need. It will all unfold in time. I trust the universe. I have faith in myself. Like, so that's
Mhm.
the new way that I address those things. But we still
Mhm.
have those little things that ping in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's that thing. If we know what the thing is, then we know what tool we're using
Yes.
now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Okay, so you talked about um, having a program with your daughter, which
Yeah.
I absolutely love that you are working alongside her. Tell us about how you two went into business together and what's that like for you?
Yeah. It's I had this vision of this. I don't remember how long ago, but you know how you get little inklings and things drop in and you're like, "No, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen." So about
Uh-huh.
5 years ago, I was like, "I think I'm going to be in business with my older daughter."
Mhm.
But she just got married, had her first child, and I was like, doesn't make any sense at all. So I just kind of left it to the side. And then when I started my business, she started providing feedback. She
Mhm.
started doing some VAing stuff for me, just here and there. She already had another job as well. And
Mhm.
so It really was just kind of formulated early summer when she came to me and she said, I'm tired of this job that I have. I'm ready to be myself and be bigger in this. So I basically coached her in letting go of her job. And then it just all started forming together. And
Mhm.
she always says it quite humorously that this is what happens when you grow up with a life coach as your mom. So you become a coach. So it's been in her, and she
Yeah.
watched me walk through that transformation. And,
Mhm.
you know, and now that we have more conversations about that, she was like, Mom, I thought you were crazy. So it's just interesting because she was 14, 15. She's like, my mom's just got sticky notes everywhere and she's nuts. But now she's like, now I have sticky notes everywhere.
Oh.
So we just started building and really looking at our own strengths and talents. And really
Mhm.
that's what program we ended up developing was helping people with their unique blueprint.
Mhm.
And because both of us have used a lot of tools like Gallup Pulse Strength
Mhm.
Finder,
Mhm.
we all have done all those assessments, DISC, all the
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
stuff. We started collecting all of that, and then I went to visit her, and we got on a networking call. And it was with a human design coach, and she
Oh.
just gave us
Mhm.
a reading and told us how to work together. And so then we just sort of leaped forward and spent 10 days working on our vision, our mission, what we're doing. And we started a program. And our first month, we made 15K. So it's like, okay, this thing is
Nice.
going to happen. So that's kind of how that started.
Mm.
I also have a younger daughter who I'm close to as well. But it's been really, really interesting to take her perspective because she's 32 and I'm 60 and
Mhm.
meld that into something that works for all age women that are in different parts of their life as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. That's such a great story.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and then we've just started our own podcast. So it's been fun
Awesome.
being
Yeah.
able to bring this out and really have a vision for what we could do together. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so why don't you tell us about the new podcast that you just started? What's the
Yes,
name? Yeah.
it's Uncover Your True Purpose. It's in YouTube, and people can find that by just going to my Instagram, which is Sandra Wood Coach, and just pulling down, in the link tree. There's all kinds of offerings in there, and they can find that piece. We also have a Facebook group called Uncover Your True Purpose, where we're also creating a lot of content for folks as well. So that's really what our jam is really helping
Nice.
people
Yeah.
figure out who are you, how do you function in the
Mhm.
world, and we're all uniquely designed. We all
Mhm.
have neurodiversities and all kinds of ways that we approach the world.
Mhm.
So it's really us helping people embrace that piece and figuring
Mhm.
out their secret sauce so that they can
Yes.
into their next level self. That's really our passion in that program as
Yeah.
well.
I
Yeah.
love that. I feel like when you were talking, it's like I feel like we're like kindred souls
Yeah.
because that's so definitely so much of what like I try to teach here with Girl
Yeah.
is that we are all unique. Like we all have individual like special things about us. No two people are the same. And we
Yes.
need to be taught to celebrate those unique strengths and not try to like conform and fit into a box that somebody else wants us to fit in.
Exactly, exactly. I just feel that so many folks are trying to fit into a model
Mhm.
of who they were told they should be. And
Mhm.
I love helping people find freedom to be
Yes.
themselves,
Yeah.
no matter what that is. We have women that are like, well, I'm trying to do social media all the time, but I hate it. And we're like, then don't do it. Like, they're like, but I'm supposed to. It's like, well, but we need to do it for you, not for what you think you should do.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know? So yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, tell us how anybody listening or watching can also work with you.
Okay. So the best way is to just start following both of us on Instagram. And I'm Sandra Wood Coach, and she is Julie K. Jones Coach. And we tend to put on free webinars. So it's just a way for you to get to know us or go listen to the podcast. And then a lot of times we'll flow that into a masterclass. But if anyone just wants to directly contact us and just find out more, they can go to my website, Sandra Wood Coach, and there's a contact us. It's an intake form that they just need to fill out. We'd like to know who you are, what where you're at in life. And so just fill that out and we'll get in touch with you and set up a call just to find out more about who you are. It is not a sales call. It is just a get to know you call. That's
Mhm.
our approach to all of this is we want to help people who really want that. So it's not a high pressure situation. It's just find out more about what we do. I have a ton of different free resources that have to do with relationships, that have to do with business. So just go there, look through the menu and see what attracts you and just reach out and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Thank you. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I definitely loved our chat today. It has been great. I love everything that you are doing, and it's just really exciting. I love people who help other people to focus on what makes them special. And
Yeah.
that, like, in this world we live in, like, you can't find and see that enough in this world. So it's just so
Yeah.
awesome that there are people like you and your daughter who specialize and focus on that.
Yeah. Awesome.
What we're going to do now is transition into three things with Sandra. I'm going to ask you three questions
Okay.
that helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. And I say three questions and always start off with one A and one B.
Okay.
how do
All
you,
right. Go.
how, how do you start and end the day?
Okay. So I start my day. I like doing habit stacking.
Mm,
So I try to have like three different habits that I wake up in the morning. So I either wake up and go straight to meditation, coffee, and journaling on one morning. And then the alternate morning, I wake up, I go to the gym, and I come home and drink a lot of water and have coffee. So I rotate my days.
mhm, mhm,
Trying to go to the gym every day does not work for me. So, and my main goal is really to meditate every day and to have some form of movement. So that's my
mhm,
morning routine. And there are some days I just take a day off of any habit
mhm.
stacking at all because I just need to rest.
Yeah.
And then evening actually have started something different. I am, and it might be one of your questions is a goal I set. Is that one of your
Yeah,
questions?
it
Okay,
is.
I'm gonna include that piece in this
Okay.
because I made a goal for myself this year to get off of a sleep medication that I started 10 years ago.
Mhm,
And I'm titrating off of it. I'm doing some sleep hygiene. And so working with a physician on that. And so
mhm,
my evening is been changing that I'm getting off all devices and any shows
mhm,
or anything an hour before bed. And I'm going into this whole process of washing up, turning on calm music, stretching a little
mhm.
bit, and then reading pretty much a boring book. So I start to fall asleep and then
Mhm,
lying in
mhm,
bed. So that's how I'm beginning and ending my day. I tend in those times, if I'm just laying in bed, I tend to put my hand in my heart in the morning and just start
mhm.
thinking about what kind of intentional day I want to have. So those are some of my habits that I
I like
practice.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
yeah,
that. All
yeah.
right, so we're gonna go to question 3,
Okay.
now. What's a book, podcast, or show, anything that might be inspiring you in this moment?
Yeah. I have been really inspired by human design,
Mhm,
wanting to learn more about that because I think that's another tool to help our clients and help understand ourselves. So I've been listening to the Your Human Design by Jenna Zoe. Her podcast. She
mhm,
also has an app, which is really cool to look up yourself and other people. So I've been
mhm,
digging into that.
yeah,
And then I've been reading a couple books. One is by a gentleman named Donnie Epstein, and it's called The Seeker's Code. And it is really going from ordinary living to extraordinary living. So it's this whole book on how to work with your energy. So I'm very interested in how do you help people who have low energy have higher energy, and I'm just interested in it for myself. And
mhm,
then I've been digging into Joe Dispenza for a little while. So I've been reading The Habit of Being Yourself, which that has a lot to do with understanding the brain and how it
mhm.
works and how you basically create a new operating system. So those are the two things
Oh,
I've been digging into lately that have been
oh,
fascinating to me. Yeah.
yes, very
Yeah.
nice. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the
Yeah.
last thing I will ask of you is if you could leave the audience with the three things you'd like for them to take away from our conversation today.
Okay. The first thing is I say this to everyone, it's never too late to change. No matter what your age or what your challenge is, you can change. You can change something that isn't working. And I am proof of it. You know, I
Mhm.
started my business again at 57. So it's just never too late. The second thing, as far as midlife goes, midlife is about weeding out what you don't need anymore. So, and I just say midlife is attend and befriend yourself time. So that's another. And then finally, I would just say, if you don't go within, you go without.
Mm.
So coming back to that thing we talked about, look at the things that you tell yourself because our internal landscape informs our external reality. So take a look at yourself, look at your thoughts, look at how you treat yourself. And at the end of the day, you have to love yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. Sandra's
Yeah.
dropping the nuggets on us. Well,
You're worth it. That's all I have to say is you're worth it.
yes.
Always worth it. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for this conversation and for all the great tips and all the nuggets that you just left us with today. Much success to you on everything that you're working on, the programs, the podcast, and always know that you can come back here in the future and join us at Glow Girl.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. You're awesome,
Awesome.
Myra. Okay.
Thank you. Stay
Thanks.
tuned, everyone. Be right back.